The gleaming spires of New Alexandria Station stretched toward the stars like crystal fingers reaching for distant worlds. Commander Samantha Reed stood at the observation deck, watching vessels of various alien designs glide past the reinforced windows. After 15 years of service in the Earth Defense Force, she still couldn't quite believe she now served as humanity's ambassador to the Galactic Council. A holographic notification flickered in her peripheral vision, projected by her neural implant. Another council session was beginning in 10 minutes. Another opportunity for the warrior races to remind humanity of their perceived inadequacies. Commander Reed, a melodic voice chimed from behind her. The Zarkanian delegation has specifically requested your presence before the session begins. Samantha turned to face her aide, a young woman named Riya Patel. Let me guess, they want to question our latest defense proposals. Riya's expression confirmed her suspicion. They're particularly concerned about the automated defense grid we've proposed for the Orion sector. Of course they are, Samantha sighed, straightening her midnight blue diplomatic uniform. Heaven forbid we suggest solving problems without charging headfirst into battle. The walk to the council chambers took them through corridors filled with representatives of 24 spacefaring civilizations. The massive Crothar, with their armored carapaces and 4 arms, barely acknowledged her presence. The serpentine SS-Reth whispered among themselves as she passed, their scales shifting colors in what she'd learned to recognize as amusement. The Zarkanian delegation waited outside the main chamber. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, with iridescent plating covering their muscular forms, they cut an intimidating figure. High Commander Vexthal, their leader, fixed Samantha with all 4 of his golden eyes. Ambassador Reed, he rumbled, not bothering with formal pleasantries. Your species continues to disappoint. We reviewed your defense proposal. Automated systems? Remote weapons platforms? Where is the honor in hiding behind machines? Samantha met his gaze steadily. High Commander, with respect, the proposal's objective is to minimize casualties while maximizing defensive capabilities. The honor lies in protecting our people effectively. Protection? Another Zarkanian warrior stepped forward, his plating flaring in what Samantha recognized as disgust. You mean cowering? Since your species joined the council, all you've demonstrated is an obsession with hiding behind technology. No true warrior fears death in battle. We don't fear death, High Commander, Samantha replied calmly. We simply don't worship it. Humanity has learned through countless wars that glory means little to the widows and orphans left behind. The chamber doors began to open, saving her from further conversation. The council chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a vast circular room with hovering platforms arranged in concentric rings. The warrior races, the Zarkanians, Crothar, and SS-Reth, occupied the highest positions. The technical races like humans were relegated to the lower rings, a physical reminder of their perceived status. Supreme Counselor Axthar, a veteran Crothar warrior, called the session to order. We gather today to discuss the growing raids along the Orion trade routes. The human delegation has submitted a proposal for defensive measures. Commander Reed, you may present your findings. Samantha activated her neural implant, projecting a holographic display in the chamber center. Thank you, Supreme Counselor. Our analysis shows the raiders are using increasingly sophisticated tactics. They're not just random attacks, there's a pattern suggesting coordinated intelligence gathering. She highlighted several trade routes in red. By establishing an automated defense grid with quantum entanglement sensors, we can dash. Enough. SS-Reth Commander interrupted, his scales flashing angry crimson. More machines, more hiding. Where is your plan for striking back? For meeting these raiders in glorious combat? Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Samantha kept her voice steady. The raiders are specifically targeting convoys with superior numbers. Meeting force with force is exactly what they're counting on. Our data suggests data. High Commander Vexthal's voice boomed through the chamber. Always data, analysis, careful planning. Tell me, Commander Reed, how did your species ever manage to reach the stars with such restraint? The word dripped with contempt. Samantha felt her diplomatic mask slipping. We reached the stars precisely because of our restraint, High Commander. Because we learned to think before we acted. Because we understood that survival often depends more on wisdom than warfare. Pretty words from a species that hasn't faced true conflict in generations, a Crothar general rumbled. You've grown soft behind your walls of technology. Samantha's neural implant registered elevated heart rate and adrenaline levels, suggesting she take calming breaths. She ignored it. With respect, General, humanity's history is written in blood and fire. We don't embrace technology because we're afraid to fight. We embrace it because we're afraid of what we become when we fight. There's a difference. The chamber erupted in discussion, most of it dismissive. Supreme Counselor Axthar raised all four arms for silence. The Council has heard the human proposal. We will now vote on implementing the suggested defensive measures. Samantha already knew how the vote would go. The warrior races held the majority, and their pride wouldn't allow them to admit that a lesser species might have the right approach. Sure enough, the proposal was rejected in favor of increasing armed patrols. Later, back in her office, Samantha stood at her private viewport watching ships depart for patrol duty. Rhea entered quietly, placing a cup of actual Earth-imported coffee on her desk. They're never going to take us seriously, are they? Rhea asked. Samantha took a sip of coffee, letting the familiar bitter taste ground her. They will. Eventually. Probably not until we save their stubborn lives, but they will. You think it'll come to that? Samantha's neural implant was still processing the raid data, showing her patterns that the Council had refused to see. Something bigger was coming. Something that wouldn't be impressed by warrior pride or traditional combat. It always does, she said quietly. And when it happens, they'll learn what humanity has known for centuries, that sometimes the greatest courage isn't in fighting the enemy. It's in being smart enough to find a better way. She turned from the viewport, her expression determined. Keep analyzing those raid patterns. Document everything. Because when whatever's coming finally shows itself, I want humanity to be ready. Not with warships and battle cries, but with something far more powerful. What's that? Rhea asked. Samantha smiled grimly. The one thing the warrior races don't expect from us, a solution that works. The station's lights dimmed slightly as it entered its night cycle, but Samantha had no intention of sleeping. Someone had to be ready for what was coming. And if the Council couldn't see past their prejudices to recognize the threat, then humanity would just have to save them all the hard way. After all, that's what cowards did best, they survived. Commander Reed's neural implant jolted her awake at 0300 station time. Red alert warnings flashed across her visual field, 3 trading outposts along the Orion route had gone silent simultaneously. She was halfway to the emergency council chamber before her boots were fully fastened. The chamber was already in chaos when she arrived. Holographic displays showed the attack locations, each marked with a pulsing red indicator. Supreme Counselor Axthar's voice boomed over the commotion. Initial reports confirmed total destruction. No distress calls. No survivors. His forearms manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on debris fields. The patrol fleets responded within minutes, but found nothing except wreckage. High Commander Vexthal's plating rippled with barely contained rage. Impossible. Our finest warships were patrolling those sectors. Nothing could have dash. Counselors, Samantha interrupted, her neural implant projecting data into the shared holographic space. Look at the attack pattern. This matches exactly what we predicted based on the previous raids. You dare interrupt Dash, a SS Reth commander began, but Supreme Counselor Axthar raised a hand for silence. Explain, Commander Reed. Samantha expanded her data projection. The raiders weren't targeting random outposts. They were testing defenses, gathering intelligence. Each raid revealed how we would respond. She highlighted patrol routes in blue. They learned our patrol patterns, response times, tactical protocols. And now they struck where we were strongest, Rhea finished quietly from beside her. To prove they could. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Centuries of warfare had taught the warrior races to expect direct confrontation, challenges of strength against strength. This calculated dismantling of their defenses was something else entirely. We received some sensor data before the outposts were destroyed, Samantha continued. My team has been analyzing it. She gestured, and new images appeared, strange, shifting forms that seemed to blur between organic and mechanical. By the Ancient Ones, a Krothar scientist whispered. What are we looking at? We're not entirely sure, Samantha admitted. But watch this. The image shifted, showing the strange entities engaging a patrol ship. As energy weapons struck them, their forms appeared to absorb and adapt, incorporating the very technology being used against them. High Commander Vexthal slammed a fist on his platform's railing. Enough analysis. They dare attack our territories? Then let them face the full might of our combined fleets. We will dash. You will die, Samantha cut in, her voice sharp enough to silence even the massive Zarkanian. Look at the data. They want us to respond with force. They're counting on it. These entities don't just destroy technology, they consume it, adapt it, evolve from it. Every direct confrontation makes them stronger. You suggest we do nothing? SS Reth Commander hissed. Hide behind our walls like humans? Samantha met his gaze steadily. I suggest we do something they're not expecting. Something they can't adapt to, because they've never encountered it before. And what would that be, Commander Reed? Supreme Counselor Axthar asked, all four eyes fixed on her intently. A human solution, she replied. One that doesn't rely on strength of arms, but on understanding the enemy. Learning their true nature. Finding their weaknesses. She paused, letting her words sink in. But first, you have to be willing to admit that charging into battle isn't always the answer. The chamber erupted in arguments. The warrior races couldn't fathom facing a threat without meeting it head-on. Their entire cultures were built around direct confrontation, glorious battle, warrior pride. Samantha's neural implant flagged new data streaming in, another outpost had gone silent. She projected the information without warning, letting the brutal reality cut through the debate. 4 outposts now, she said quietly. How many more will it take before pride becomes less important than survival? Supreme Counselor Axthar studied the new data, his massive frame unusually still. You have 1 planetary rotation, Commander Reed. Present us with this, human solution. But know that if it fails, we will proceed with full military mobilization. Samantha nodded sharply and turned to leave, Rhea falling in step beside her. In the corridor, her aide finally spoke. Do you actually have a solution? No, Samantha admitted, her pace quickening. But we're going to find one. Contact every human analyst, scientist, and strategist on the station. Wake up every Earth university if you have to. What are we looking for? Samantha's neural implant was already compiling data, running simulations, searching for patterns others might have missed. Something no warrior would ever think of. Something so seemingly cowardly, so apparently weak, that these entities won't see it coming until it's too late. Her implant flagged another concerning pattern in the attack data. They had less time than even the Council realized. But humanity had spent centuries being underestimated, overlooked, dismissed as cowards. Maybe it was time to show the galaxy why that was the greatest mistake an enemy could make. As she reached her office, emergency alerts were still flashing across her visual field. Somewhere out there, an enemy unlike anything the galaxy had faced was growing stronger, learning, adapting. And humanity's supposed weakness, their reliance on technology, their preference for analysis over action, their cowardly caution, might be the only thing standing between civilization and extinction. Samantha allowed herself a grim smile. Time to show them what cowards can do. The combined fleet of the warrior races was a sight that would have inspired awe in any observer. Over 300 capital ships, their hulls gleaming with weapons arrays and battle scars, moved in perfect formation through the void. At their head, High Commander Vexthal's flagship, the Eternal Glory, led the charge. Samantha watched from New Alexandria Station's command center, her neural implant recording everything. She had spent the last 20 hours trying to convince the Council this was a mistake. Now all she could do was document the consequences. Fleet approaching target coordinates, Rhea reported, her voice tight. Enemy signatures detected, they're everywhere. The holographic display showed them, thousands of the strange entities swarming through space like a metallic tide. They seemed to shimmer between states, organic one moment, mechanical the next. High Commander, Samantha transmitted on an open channel. There's still time to recall the fleet. Our analysis shows dash. Silence, human, Vexthal's voice boomed back. Watch and learn how true warriors face their enemies. The Eternal Glory's weapons blazed to life, launching a barrage that could have cracked a small moon. Other ships joined in, filling space with enough firepower to annihilate a planetary system. For a moment, it seemed to work. Several of the entities were vaporized, their strange forms dissipating into space. A cheer went up from the Zarkanian commanders present in the command center. Then Samantha's neural implant detected the change. Energy readings are spiking, she announced, her voice cutting through the celebration. The entities, they're not dying. They're evolving, Rhea finished in horror. The swarm seemed to pulse, its individual units reshaping themselves. Where the weapon's fire struck, they didn't burn, they absorbed, adapted, grew stronger. New forms emerged, incorporating the very technology being used against them. Impossible, a Crothar general bellowed. Our weapons dash. Are making them stronger, Samantha cut in. Every shot fired, every piece of technology they absorb, they're learning, adapting, becoming more powerful. The proud combined fleet's formation began to break as the swarm counterattacked. Ships that had survived centuries of warfare were torn apart in seconds. The entities had learned from every weapon used against them, turning the fleet's own strength back upon itself. Eternal glory to all ships, fall back. Vexthal's voice had lost its arrogant edge. Full retreat. Full dash. His transmission cut off as his mighty flagship disappeared in a burst of light. The swarm had simply passed through its shields as if they weren't there, their adapted forms negating the very defensive technology they had absorbed. Tracking enemy adaptation rate, Rhea reported, her fingers flying over holographic controls. They're incorporating our technology exponentially faster than predicted. At this rate, they'll be unstoppable within hours, Samantha finished. Her neural implant was processing the battle data, showing her exactly how the entities were evolving. Each destroyed ship made them stronger, more efficient, more deadly. The command center fell silent as they watched the proud combined fleet, the greatest military force in known space, dissolve into chaos. Ships tried to retreat, but the swarm had learned their engine signatures, could match and exceed their speeds. Of the 300 ships that had entered battle, less than 50 managed to escape. Supreme Counselor Axthar's massive frame seemed to have aged decades in minutes. How, how many lost? 263 capital ships destroyed, Ria reported quietly. Crew complement estimated at over 100,000 warriors. The silence that followed was deafening. The warrior races had never known such defeat. Their greatest strength, their advanced military technology and combat prowess, had been turned against them in the most brutal way possible. Commander Reed, Axthar spoke finally, his voice heavy. You warned us this would happen. Your analysis predicted this outcome. Samantha nodded, still recording everything through her neural implant. The entities don't think like us, Counselor. They don't care about honor or glory or combat prowess. They see technology as food, battle as a chance to evolve. Every direct confrontation makes them stronger. Then how do we fight an enemy we cannot fight? A SS Reth commander demanded, his scales pale with shock. We don't, Samantha replied simply. At least, not the way you're used to fighting. She gestured, and her neural implant projected new data, the results of 20 hours of intense analysis by human scientists and strategists across known space. We've found patterns in their behavior, weaknesses in their adaptation process. But exploiting them will require something the warrior races have never been good at. And what is that, Commander? Axthar asked. Thinking like cowards, she answered with a grim smile. Using every trick, every deception, every seemingly dishonorable tactic we can devise. Fighting without fighting. Winning without combat. The chamber erupted in objections, but they were weaker now, tempered by the shock of defeat. Samantha kept speaking, her voice carrying over the chaos. Your way failed. The entities destroyed your finest ships, absorbed your strongest weapons, and grew more powerful from the attempt. Now you have a choice, cling to your warrior pride and watch civilization fall, or... Axthar prompted. Or let humanity show you a better way. Let the coward save your lives. The silence that followed was broken only by the continuing emergency alerts as the swarm consolidated its gains, growing stronger from the technology it had consumed. Finally, Supreme Counselor Axthar spoke, his voice carrying the weight of centuries of warrior tradition, and the bitter taste of its failure. Tell us your plan, Commander Reed. Show us the coward's path to victory. Samantha's neural implant was already compiling the data, preparing to show them exactly how humanity's greatest perceived weakness might become the galaxy's salvation. The war for survival was about to change. And this time, strength wouldn't win it. Intelligence would. A virus? High Commander Vexthal's plating rippled with disbelief. Your great solution is to infect them with a computer virus? Samantha stood before the emergency council, her neural implant projecting complex diagrams into the chamber's holographic space. 2 days had passed since the combined fleet's destruction, and the entities had only grown stronger. Not just any virus, she explained. A quantum-entangled adaptive code that mimics their own evolutionary capabilities. But instead of making them stronger, it introduces subtle errors into their adaptation process. Like a cancer, added Dr. Raj Patel, Earth's leading xenobiologist, his hologram flickering beside her. It doesn't try to destroy them directly, it corrupts their ability to properly integrate new technology. The council chamber had changed. Gone was the traditional hierarchy of platforms. Now everyone sat at the same level, pride abandoned in the face of extinction. The entities had consumed 3 more outposts since the fleet's destruction, growing more powerful with each absorption. The code is based on their own adaptive patterns, Samantha continued. Every time they try to evolve, the errors compound. They'll think they're growing stronger, but they'll actually be weakening themselves. Deception, SS Reth Commander hissed. Trickery. Poison. This is not the way of warriors. No, Samantha agreed. It's the way of survivors. And right now, that's what we need to be. Her neural implant flagged new data, another outpost had gone silent. The entities were moving faster now, growing bolder with each victory. But the data also showed something else, something that made her smile grimly. "They're getting overconfident," she noted. "Making mistakes. They think they've figured us out, that we'll keep trying to fight them directly. That's our opportunity. To infect them with this virus," Axthar rumbled. "But how do we deliver it? They adapt to any technology that approaches them." "We don't deliver it," Samantha replied. "We let them take it. More specifically, we let them take this." Her neural implant projected an image of a massive space station, one that didn't exist yet. "The Trojan horse," she explained. "A station filled with the most advanced technology we can create. Weapons, shields, propulsion systems, all deliberately flawed in ways they won't detect until it's too late. They'll think they've found a treasure trove of new tech to absorb. Instead, they'll be absorbing their own destruction." The chamber erupted in discussion. It was a plan that went against everything the warrior races believed in. No glorious battles, no honorable combat, just carefully planned deception and patient waiting. "How long to build this station?" Axthar asked. 3 days with combined resources," Rhea answered. "We've already begun fabrication at hidden facilities. Everything is being constructed according to Dr. Patel's specifications." 3 days? Vexthal's plating flared. The entities could destroy a dozen more outposts in that time. "Yes," Samantha agreed. "They could. Which is why we're going to give them something else to focus on." Her neural implant projected a new set of tactical displays. "We're going to leak information about a massive fleet gathering. Let them think we're planning another direct assault. The warrior races will appear to be marshalling their remaining forces for one final battle." "Appear to be?" a Crothar general questioned. "It's all a deception," Samantha explained. "Holographic projections, false energy signatures, leaked communications, everything designed to convince them we're planning exactly what they expect, another foolish direct attack. While we're actually completing the Trojan horse," Rhea added. "They'll be so focused on preparing for the Phantom Fleet that they won't look too closely at one seemingly abandoned station." The council chamber fell silent as the full scope of the plan became clear. It was devious, indirect, seemingly cowardly, and it might be their only chance for survival. "It goes against everything we believe," Vexthal said quietly. "Yes," Samantha agreed. "That's why it will work. The entities have learned to counter your strength, your courage, your advanced technology. But they've never encountered anything like this, because you've never done anything like this." Her neural implant flagged another alert, the entities had destroyed another outpost. But this time, the alert brought a smile to her face. "They're following the exact pattern we predicted," she noted. "They think they understand us. Think they know how we'll react. That certainty is their weakness." Supreme Counselor Axthar stood, his massive frame casting shadows in the holographic light. "You realize, Commander Reed, that if this fails, we will have sacrificed our very way of life for nothing." "With respect, Counselor," Samantha replied, "if we don't try this, there won't be any way of life left to sacrifice." The chamber fell silent again, broken only by the steady stream of data flowing through Samantha's neural implant. Somewhere out there, the entities were growing stronger, consuming more technology, becoming more certain of their victory. They had no idea that their greatest triumph, breaking the warrior race's pride, would become their ultimate downfall. "Begin construction," Axthar ordered finally. "And may the Ancient Ones forgive us for winning without honor." Samantha's smile was grim. "Sometimes, Counselor, survival is the highest honor of all." The plan was set in motion. Now they just had to hope that humanity's greatest weakness, their tendency to think like cowards, would prove to be the galaxy's greatest strength. The Trojan horse station hung in space like a glittering jewel, its systems broadcasting seemingly random power fluctuations. From her position on New Alexandria's command deck, Samantha watched the final pieces of their plan fall into place. Station reading nominal, Rhea reported. All systems showing the expected controlled instabilities. The virus is integrated into every component. Dr. Patel's hologram nodded in satisfaction. The flaws are perfect, subtle enough to bypass their initial analysis, but devastating once they try to integrate the technology. Samantha's neural implant tracked multiple swarms of entities moving through nearby systems. The false fleet signatures they'd been broadcasting had worked perfectly. The enemy was massing for what they thought would be a final confrontation. "Contact," a sensor operator announced. First wave of entities approaching the station. The command deck fell silent. Warriors who had once sneered at human caution now watched intently as humanity's plan unfolded. The entities surrounded the station, their shifting forms probing its defenses. "They're scanning the technology," Rhea reported. "Reading massive energy fluctuations, they're beginning absorption." Samantha's neural implant recorded everything as the entities began consuming the station. Their forms rippled and changed as they integrated what they thought were advanced new weapons, shields, and propulsion systems. "Virus integration at 15%, Dr. Patel announced. They're adapting it into their core systems exactly as predicted." High Commander Vexthal's plating shifted nervously. "How long until dash?" "Wait," Samantha interrupted softly. "Just watch." The entities had fully surrounded the station now, their swarm growing visibly as they absorbed its technology. But something was changing. Their usually smooth transitions between forms became jerky, uncertain. "Virus integration at 45%, Dr. Patel reported. The cascade is beginning." The effect spread through the swarm like ripples in a pond. Entities trying to adapt new technology found their forms destabilizing. Attempts to compensate only spread the corruption faster. "They're trying to purge the infected systems," Rhea noted. "But the virus is using their own adaptive protocols against them. Every attempt to fix the problem makes it worse." Samantha's neural implant captured the moment when the entities realized they'd been tricked. The swarm's coordinated movements became chaotic as individual units tried desperately to stabilize their forms. "Virus integration at 80%, Dr. Patel announced with quiet satisfaction. Complete systematic failure beginning." The command deck watched in silence as the mighty swarm that had destroyed the combined fleet began to tear itself apart. Units that tried to separate from the infected ones found they already carried the corruption. Their greatest strength, the ability to absorb and adapt technology, had become their undoing. Secondary swarms detecting the distress signals, Rhea reported. "They're moving to assist, and becoming infected themselves." Like a chain reaction, the corruption spread from swarm to swarm. The entity's interconnected nature, their drive to absorb and adapt, carried the virus throughout their entire network. "By the Ancient Ones," Supreme Counselor Axthar whispered. "They're destroying themselves." "No," Samantha corrected gently. "They're being destroyed by their own certainty. Their absolute confidence that they understood us, that they knew we would only ever attack directly, fight honorably, meet strength with strength." The holographic displays showed the entity swarms dissolving into chaos across multiple systems. Some tried to flee, only to find the corruption had already spread through their adapted technologies. Others attempted to purge all their absorbed systems, only to discover the virus had become part of their core programming. "Final containment units moving into position," Rhea announced. "Ready to collect any surviving samples for study." Samantha nodded. They hadn't just wanted to destroy the entities, they wanted to understand them, learn from them, ensure this could never happen again. It was the human way. The command deck erupted in celebration as the last major swarm succumbed to the virus. Warriors who had once despised human caution now embraced their former rivals, their pride forgotten in the joy of survival. Commander Reed, High Commander Vexthal approached her, his massive frame bowing slightly. We were wrong about humans. What we saw as cowardice was wisdom. What we condemned as weakness was strength of a different kind. Samantha smiled. There are many kinds of courage, Commander. Sometimes it takes more bravery to wait, to think, to solve a problem without fighting, than it does to charge into battle. A lesson we won't forget, Supreme Counselor Axthar declared. From this day forward, the human approach will have equal standing in our councils. We will learn to balance the warrior's courage with the thinker's wisdom. As the celebration continued around her, Samantha's neural implant captured one final piece of data, the entity's core programming, preserved in the containment units. They would study it, understand it, and be ready if anything like this ever threatened the galaxy again. You were right, Rhea said quietly beside her. The coward saved them all. Samantha watched the warriors celebrating with their former rivals, barriers of pride and prejudice forgotten. No, she corrected with a smile. We all saved each other. They just had to be brave enough to let us help. In the void of space, the last remnants of the entity swarms faded away, defeated not by superior firepower or glorious combat, but by the very thing they had dismissed as weakness, humanity's careful, cautious, methodical approach to solving problems. It turned out that sometimes, the greatest victory wasn't in winning the battle. It was in being wise enough to find a better way to fight.